Hey, good morning, everyone. This is TractorMan 44. Now, I ain't really a mechanic, and I don't play one on TV, but we do work on a lot of stuff and take a lot of stuff apart. You know yourself, when you pull any kind of an engine apart, whether it's a gasoline engine or a diesel engine, you have to take care to make sure that you get it reinstalled or everything reassembled in correct timing. So when you pull the distributor out of a gasoline engine, you need to know that what position it's in for reinstalling it, or you need to rotate the engine around to where number one center is top dead center on the compressor stroke and everything before you pull the distributor. Note it and then go ahead and reinstall it in that same fashion. Okay, now on a diesel engine, the injector pump is essentially the same thing as your distributor. It is and it isn't. It is in so far as the fact that it has to be perfectly in time with the correct cylinders so that it injects the fuel to those respective cylinders at that specific time. Okay, now, if you just willy-nilly go and jerk an injector pump off because you've got a problem with the pump or whatever, and don't pin the pump if it has the capacity for being pinned, or figure out exactly where that pump is in relation to the actual engine's rotation, you're going to be in for a world of hurt whenever you put it all back together. Okay, so on my LX865 turbocharged 65 horsepower New Holland, we have a bad fuel issue with the injector pump, and we had to pull it off. Well, like I said, I can't take full credit for this, obviously, because I had to get a hold of my buddy that's a heavy equipment mechanic, and he kind of gave me a rough idea. As a matter of fact, once I'd taken the pump off, I took it over to his house to let him show me exactly what they mean by pinning the pump, and it's just simple as can be. But inadvertently, because we're used to taking apart gasoline engines and things of that nature, we rolled the engine over to where we were on the compressor stroke of number one cylinder, which on a skid loader is the one nearest the radiator, which is the rear, which is actually the front of the engine because they're backwards. We automatically moved the number one cylinder to top dead center on the compressor stroke, and then double checked to make sure our timing marks was in alignment on the crankshaft and the camshaft, and then looked for timing marks on the gear drive that goes to the injector pump, which there was none. So I went ahead and took a Dremel tool and went ahead and put me a T-shaped mark in alignment with the new mark I put on the drive gear that drives the injector pump, and that actually was a godsend, simply because inadvertently that is the correct routine that you have to go through to pull the injection pump on this particular tractor. There's no real simple way of timing it, so by the mere fact that we had the engine prepared for removal, by nature of how we take things apart anyway, it worked out in our favor. But on these Lucas injection pumps, and like I said, my buddy is a heavy equipment mechanic, and he just pointed out to me perfectly, because of the fact that we were able to, we verified that we took the pump off with the engine in a proper position. All we had to do is remove this little screw right here, or this little pin, and you'll notice there's a figure eight shaped hole. There's a figure eight shaped hole in the washer. Okay, so what you do, the one side of the 8 is larger than the other side of the 8, and the pin is just that much longer. There's a spot inside on the drive gear or on the drivetrain inside the pump, to where once you get everything aligned, you want to loosen this up right here and slide this from the small opening to the large opening, and then drive this all the way in with a wrench, and then that will push that pin just the thickness of the washer farther, but right in, and lock the pump in the position that it needs to be in, so that when you reassemble it, it'll be in perfect time with the engine. So it was a little bit of blind leading to blind. We got lucky and we did take it apart correctly, but that was only because we're used to taking apart things and making sure we know where the engine's at. You know what I mean? Whenever it's disassembled. So at any rate, on this Lucas pump, I hope you guys can focus on that. And I don't know anything about the other pumps. I don't know if it's the same on the Rorta or whatever it is, or on the other brands of pumps. But this one here has got that figure eight washer, and the thickness of the washer is just the amount that pin needs to be inserted a little farther to lock the pump in the position it needs to stay in. So I've got a date in the morning to at a diesel injection service location some miles south of me. I'm going to take that down there, and then also the injectors on this engine had never been out before. It took us hours to get a couple of those injectors out. One of them came out pretty easily, but the way this thing is set up, and the guy I got it from, it always sat outside with no protection over the top of it, and it's got that vented screen on top of the engine. Well, the rainwater and the snow would melt and everything and run down and rest on top of the cylinder head, and of course the injectors inject straight in on top of that in this particular engine. And so all that water would sit down in that sump around that injector and just literally rusted those things horrifically. I don't know if I'm going to have to replace those injectors or if they're going to be able to be rebuilt. The guy told me on the phone that they'll go ahead and tell me tomorrow. It's going to cost like $55 a piece if they are rebuildable, and that depends on the orifice or on the nozzle that's in the individual injectors. Here's the injectors right here. Now you can see obviously it's a 2-bolt flange, and your fitting comes right into the top, you know, for your fuel. And this is your nozzle and everything down here, but this is completely pitted this entire length all the way down to where it seals with the copper ring right into the top of the head. There's no doubt about it, this thing is going to have to run better whenever we get it done with the injection pump serviced and then getting these guys serviced, because these things here are just absolutely terrible. That's probably the worst one of the three. This one here came out without too much of a trouble. Now this was a real bad one because we had to drive it backwards and forward to get it rocking back and forth, and the whole time pulling up on it with a have a slide hammer with a hook. We were able to get underneath the side and alternately pull up here and pull up here. If I'd had the right fitting, we probably could have ran that fitting right down into the top of this and then used that slide hammer on that right there to pull directly up and out of the head. But didn't have that fitting, and so we had to do what we had to do. But actually kind of excited to get this stuff down there and see what kind of expense the total project's going to be. There's usually a flat rate for pump rebuilds, you know, whether it's a 3-cylinder or 4-cylinder, whatever, usually, unless they have a lot of crazy stuff they have to purchase, you know. This one here just literally got some bad fuel in it, got some debris and then water mixture in the fuel. And it really dealt us a fit. Well, like I said, we've got it on a downhill run now, and I'm pretty sure that when we get it back, we'll be able to put it back together and then get everything going pretty good. So like I say, I don't know if this helped anybody, but hopefully it will, because kind of made us scratch our brains just a little bit, you know what I mean, to get it to this point. But at any rate, I'm real happy that we were lucky enough to pull it apart correctly, even though we weren't really sure exactly what we were doing. So, you know, that's what happens sometimes, you know. But then again, like I told my son, I said, you know, unless we tear into it and figure out what's going on, all we got is a hunk of junk sitting there, you know, a 10,000-pound hunk of junk. So all we're going to do is just, you know, make it a little bit lighter by taking some parts off of it. So we went ahead and tore into it, and we've got it on a downhill run. So hopefully that'll kind of help somebody if they're looking specifically for a Ford New Holland LX865 Lucas injection pump and how to pin the pump for removal. Hope this kind of helps somebody. Don't know if it will or not. Hey guys, as a follow-up to everything I said earlier in the video, the gentleman down there that did the rebuilding for me told me that with the pin and the pump, he said, and this particular pump here, you don't necessarily have to take the engine to top dead center on number 1. He said just stop your engine, yeah, of course, and go ahead and pull your battery out to where there's no way the engine can rotate when the injection pump is removed. Pin the pump in that position right there, and then remove the pump, bring it in for rebuild. They will reset it exactly at the location that it comes into the shop. You reassemble it as long as the engine has not rotated any amount at all. As long as it has stayed stationary, this will be perfectly timed whenever it's reinstalled. So you don't necessarily have to do, like I said originally, about getting number 1 cylinder to top dead center. In my estimation, it's always a good idea to do that before you dismantle. My buddy admittedly didn't know all the particulars about this exact pump, but the rebuild shop did, and I wanted to pass that information on to you guys. And again, this is the Ford New Holland LX865 skid steer, 3-cylinder skid steer. You can see the condition to come back in like new condition. I didn't expect anything less. And then here's the injectors. They clean, service the injectors. Everything is copacetic. Everything is good. Got me new gaskets, new copper washers and everything, so they're ready to go back. So you know what? That's the end of this little video here. Now all we got to do is just do the assembly. And this is TrackMan 44. And I'm out of here, guys.